Welcome back to the Fun Run, where we like to run and we like to have fun. This is our third episode, and we swear this week we will not talk about how great or how terrible certain shoes are. Instead, we're going to focus on a couple that have come out since the start of the year, talk briefly about their pros and cons, if you should consider them at all, and then we will get into New Year's resolutions. This is about the time of year when the average person gives up on their resolution. And a lot of resolutions, of course, have to do with getting fit and starting to run. And we'll talk about how you can make a resolution unsuccessful or very successful, and the differences between those two extremes. James, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great. I'm feeling refreshed after a week break, but yeah, I'm ready to
Sounds
go.
like a great time. One shoe that we were both very excited about because the previous version was pretty darn good was the New Balance 1080. It came out this past January, and I think it's a slight downgrade.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that they kind of addressed a lot of our issues as far as the volume within the shoe. Makes a lot more sense with the upper how it is now. It's not going to be so. It's going to be more like a sack type feel, which is going to be better for kind of that more natural fit. And I just think that the rocker and the kind of high cushion that they provide has definitely made it a lot better of a shoe than the previous
I
model.
I have a real issue with the mid assembly of the shoe where it really felt like my foot got squeezed, and my foot is not wide at all, so I honestly shouldn't feel that, and I didn't feel that in the 1080 version 10, but I felt it in this one, and it really took me out of the running experience because when I was putting some paces through in that shoe, I just constantly felt the middle of my foot get squished like a boa constrictor was around it. The other big issue that I had with the version 11 was the sort of redone heel cup. I felt like it started pinching in a bit too early on the heel, and that I think would have caused pain a bit later, as well as a slightly less secure fit.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have a little bit of a wider foot, not necessarily a wide, but definitely not a narrow. Yeah, I mean that shoe's definitely gonna feel a little bit different for each individual, but for me, I just kind of felt like my heel was really locked in there. I've had a lot of success kind of selling it off to multiple clients. They found it actually to be a pretty good fit if they're used to New Balance. Um, Pretty brand loyal to New Balance. So yeah, I mean, if it's gonna do well in the market, I'm kind of excited to see where it
Yeah,
goes.
that one comes in at $150, so no price change there. Our next shoe we put on the worst list of 2020, and I fear we have a candidate for the worst shoe of 2021 already. It's the Wave Inspire 17. What did they do? They overbuilt the upper and then made the cushioning harder. Two things that we had issues with in the last shoe that they have just completely exacerbated. It's the shoe is uncomfortable uh, to just incredible proportions. It is a frustrating shoe to wear because the Inspire actually used to be good, and now it's one of the worst shoes that we have to carry.
Yeah, I mean, when I was kind of going off my list, I was thinking of more of the 17 than the 16, just because I was able to try on the 17 early, and yeah, it was a awful shoe. I mean, if you're thinking of hard, kind of firm cushion type feel, now put in some cement. Like that's what the Wave Inspire 17 is now. You're stepping on cement. It's heavy, it's clunky, like you said, the upper is overdone. It's completely disproportionate to what it used to be. It used to be a pretty sleek, nice cushion shoe, but now it's complete opposite, just bulky no matter where you look. It I didn't even have to tie it up That's how bad it was. I just slipped it on, or the laces were extremely loose, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna get a feel for it. Whatever. Even if I even if I tie it up, it's not gonna feel well on my foot. And I sucked it up, tied it, wore it for 5 minutes, and my feet started to hurt. And I'm like, I can't do this. So I had to take it off pretty quickly.
Indeed, it's terrible to hyperbolic proportions. And again, this one comes in at 135, which means no price change, but it is still $5 more expensive than the industry standard for the high cushion stability niche. The next shoe, our third shoe, is a shoe that needed a bit of a revamp. And we are talking about the Ultra Lonepeak 5. This shoe has really not changed that much, except that the fit feels a bit better. I think that the area around the heel got a bit smaller, and the rest of it though feels very similar. I don't think the Lone Peak is a shoe that I would get even even with this update, but I definitely see that there is a market for it and a customer who would buy it.
Yeah, I mean the Lone Peak kind of really put their foot in the right direction for this make and model at the for Lone Peak number 5. Um, they have got, I feel like it has gotten a little bit softer for the cushioning, but like you said, it does kind of hold in that heel a little bit better. Um, I tried it on. I thought it felt pretty good. Couldn't wear it too long. I don't know if that's just because I was wearing it around on carpeting and cement flooring. But I feel like this would be a pretty good option if you're getting into trails. That's what it's really designed for. The color options on it, though, I'm not a big fan. The one that I tried on was a light gray on top and then a kind of a bright blue with some neon green on the bottom for some sort of trim. And I, I, ugh, I wasn't a fan. I probably would have been a bigger fan if it was switched around for color options. But I mean, can't complain too much. It's the foot in the right direction. They're not there yet, but they're getting closer.
Yes, they changed the midsole material that they use compared to the last Lone Peak, and I think that helped a lot. The the other thing is, as you mentioned, the colors. There are certain color options like the completely red version that I think look pretty darn good, actually. But the gray versions, the more muted, subdued versions, with the material and the matte finish that they use, just not that great. For what it is, though, a mid cushion level, sort of, I guess, in Ultra's lineup, a bit of a faster shoe. It does the job. No more, no less. Comes in at, I believe, 120, which is a fair price, and if that's the kind of shoe you're looking for, consider the Lone Peak. Finally, we have two Brooks shoes in the same niche, neither of which I particularly enjoy, one of which I really don't enjoy at all, actually. But we'll start with a bit more positivity with the all-new Launch 8. They changed nothing about the midsole, but the upper is a bit more flexible, it's a bit wider, and they added a elfin heel tab. I think these are positive changes, but because the midsole is the same, it's not soft enough where I can really dial it in as a sort of Brooks shoe, which Brooks tends to be softer, but it's not rigid enough where it has the sort of um, responsiveness like something like the Kinvara, or if you really want to go there, the New Balance Tempo. So still kind of trying to find its spot. If they want to really improve the launch, they probably need to change the midsole material.
Yeah, and I think that if you're a fan of the launch already, It's a pretty good option. I mean, the feel's going to be pretty much the same, like you said, with that midsole material, but the upper is just nice. I think that's the biggest plus about the entire shoe. It's a pretty standard launch with a little bit of nice upgrades as far as the upper goes. So if you're a fan of the launch, I think you should definitely check out this current model.
For sure, it comes in at $100. It has the Launch GTS version, which is Brooks's mainline light stability slash guidance shoe. So it's basically a launch with some guide rails. If you need some stability and you want a lightweight, faster shoe, definitely a good choice there. That one comes in at $110. The other shoe is the Ricochet 3. They have cut out quite a bit of DNA AMP. Great idea. They put it all on the front where your foot's going to be pushing off anyway. The upper hasn't changed that much. It's still quite thin. It's become more similar to the Levitate, which means that it's rigid, doesn't offer the best fit, but there's more DNA loft cushioning, I believe, is what they're using in there as well. And my question at this point is, this shoe comes in at $120. I don't understand why you would want it, because there are shoes out there that will give you the responsiveness of the Ricochet. I would even argue that the Launch gives you similar responsiveness with a lot more comfortable fit, a lot more comfortable feel, and a more manageable price tag.
Yeah, I think kind of like how Altra is there with the Ricochet. I mean, it's a step in the right direction. I mean, limiting a lot of that DNA amp is a big step for them. I still think that the Levitate and the Ricochet is just their experimental shoes to see how it's going to go, how it's going to work. I really think that they're just trying to do anything and everything to try something new, try to get people to like it. But again, it's not working. That it's like you said, the feel's a little bit off. I don't know if it's just kind of the firmness within it, or if it's just the whole design of the shoe. Um, but again, just get rid of the DNA amp. Stick with foam. Stick towards the launch. I mean, really focus on the launch. Dial that in. I think that if you can make it as popular as the Ghost is, I think that the launch would be a way better option.
Indeed. I I have a hard time accepting though that the DNA AMP is still some form of experiment, because we've had as many versions of the Levitate as we had of the A6 Dynaflight, and and a lot of resources were put into the Dynaflight. I mean, there are a lot of resources put into any shoe that's made it to 4 separate iterations, and so I don't think DNA AMP is, it can't be considered an experiment anymore because it's been on the market for so long, and yet Brooks always changes it every time. And so I don't know if they've quite found that shoe yet, and if perhaps they should put more resources into DNA Flash, the midsole material in the Hyperion Tempo. Definitely a big question mark there. The Ricochet comes in at the aforementioned $120 mark, which means it's about $10 to $20 above the usual lightweight, fast shoe market standard price. And I don't quite think it stands up to much scrutiny. Okay, James, we're going to give each of these shoes a score. We're going to give it a thumbs up, a thumbs to the side, a thumbs down, or stay away from this shoe. It's the plague. We'll start with the 1080. I give this one a thumbs to the side. It's fine. It does the job if it fits, and there's not much more I can say.
Yeah, I mean, I go right in the middle between thumbs to the side and thumbs up, a little bit farther to the side. I think that again, it's in the step in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, I think it's still a pretty decent shoe, so I'm pretty
The
happy
next
with it.
one, the Inspire, I think you guys know where we're gonna go with this one. It's a definite avoid like the plague. Even if it feels nice when you try it on in the store, it will it can it has the potential to cause harm to your foot because it's just so rigid, it's so hard, it's so uncomfortable, and there's really no reason to get it. There is no redeeming quality of it whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I tried it on for 5 minutes and I couldn't deal with it. I mean, you're gonna try on all these shoes and you're gonna be like, wow, these feel great. But until you start walking around, until you start running, and maybe it won't kick in at a mile or two, but three, four, maybe more than that, you're gonna really start to feel it and you're not gonna be
Okay, the
happy.
Lone Peak, again, another thumbs to the side. It does no more and no less than what it's supposed to do. I think it's an improvement on the Lone Peak 4.5, but that is really the best I can say about it.
Yeah, thumbs straight to the side, not gonna go up, not gonna go down. It's standard shoe. I'm happy with it at a reasonable price, and I think it's gonna do the job that you're expecting it
The
to do.
launch, I'm going to actually give a thumbs up. It's a shoe. If you're in the lightweight 100 price mark range, you should try it on. I personally don't like it, but maybe you do. And if you do, it's gonna do what you want. It's gonna do it very well. It's gonna be competent. It's gonna be comfortable, and there's nothing I can say necessarily bad about it compared to other thumbs to the side shoes. But again, it's not too great. So just temper your expectations a little bit when you do try it on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it a thumbs up too. I think that the upper that has been reworked is a great idea. Now it's just if you really want to give it two thumbs up, you got to work out that midsole. But yeah, it's going to be a shoe that's going to be fast. It's going to be able to kind of handle what you're wanting to do with it. I would keep it more as a speed shoe. I wouldn't really run any sort of long distance in it. I'd keep it for more of the short, fast stuff, and I'll be
Okay,
happy
and
with it.
finally, the Ricochet, definite thumbs down. It's too pricey. It doesn't do its job particularly well, not at least not better than any other shoe in its niche. If you want to go fast, there are other cheaper shoes that feel a lot better. So it ends up being a thumbs down. I really wouldn't buy it unless you really jive with the shoe. It's the perfect thing for you, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I'll give it a thumbs down too. I mean, it's not extremely expensive at being at 120, but again, it's just there's better options out there. Even if you have to pitch in 10, 15 bucks more, it's going to be worth it. Um, again, the Ricochet, I've never really been a fan of. It's been hard for me to get kind of along their kind of how would I say kind of hard to join in what they're kind of putting out there, saying that it's a great shoe and it's a shoe that sells well. I haven't seen it, I haven't experienced it, and hopefully, maybe one of these days they'll get something right about it.
Indeed. Okay, now let's move on to New Year's resolutions. Every year, you either make one yourself, make some big promises that you probably don't end up keeping, or someone pressures them onto you and you have no intention of keeping them anyway. A lot of us like to make New Year's resolutions about running, and that makes sense. Running offers very many cardiovascular fitness opportunities, and it's a great way to stay in shape, a great way to see your community. But if you do it wrong, it can be very painful.
Yeah, I mean, New Year's resolutions, they might seem like a great idea, but the biggest thing about it is commitment. And what's the hardest thing about New Year's resolutions? Commitment. I mean, I think I saw something that was like within the first 4 days, on the fourth day of the new year, most people have already broken their New Year's resolutions. So that's only 4 days in. If you're, let's say you want to run 1 mile, well, you might be able to run a mile off the bat, but can you actually run like a strong, hard, fast mile? And I get it, like people's speeds and people's times are completely different from everyone else depending on how you train, how you eat, how you sleep, any sort of stress in your life. But if you're kind of setting a goal out there for yourself, like I personally want to run a fast mile, you can't do that within a week. I would I don't even think you could do it within a month. I think that the biggest thing is going to be that hard work and commitment. So, yeah, New Year's resolutions. They're fun. I mean, they're fun to make up and kind of put something out there saying that you're going to do something. If you can stick to it, props to you because many people
Indeed,
can't.
I think it's very important to draw the line between a resolution and a goal because one is a lot stronger than the other. With a goal, it's very specific. You know exactly what you want to do, down to the T. You have a time limit so that you have accountability as well, and it's realistic. Saying that you are going to run every day of the year if you have never seriously run consistently before. First of all, that's not realistic because you are going to need pauses. Second of all, that's not all too specific either because what does running every day look like? You can run to the mailbox and back. That's technically running. And I guarantee your brain is going to count that as running. Indeed, it's also very easy to say, oh, I'll get into running. But that's even worse. Because what does get into running mean? By when are you going to get into running? How far do you want to take this? And so it's very important to have a goal that's specific, that's has a time limit that can keep you accountable and that's realistic.
Yeah, I mean, even with New Year's resolutions too, I've experienced this going out to the gym. I mean, I have winter training when I was in college that I needed to get some miles in, and with it being crappy out, I mean, it's January. We live in Minnesota. You can't tell me that the first day of January you're gonna get out and start running. Oh God, no. You're gonna slip and fall on ice. You're not even gonna get your butt out the door in the first place because it's gonna be too cold. And get this, I've experienced this with a couple gyms where they're actually closed on New Year's Day. They're closed on the first day of the year and they open on the second day. Well, if you don't get your butt out that first day, you already failed your New Year's resolutions. You can't say, oh, on January 2nd, because you missed a whole day then. Um, so it's, I mean, again, going back to in college, bringing back my glory days, I know uh, after each season, going from cross country to indoor track to outdoor track, I took 2 weeks off. I mean, and that was complete no running, completely resting, getting myself mentally prepared for starting up again, focusing on what I wanted to achieve for that season. And that was the break that you needed. I mean, it's not only just a mental relaxation, it's also a body relaxation. I mean, for me, I needed to constantly run 7 days a week so that it doesn't spiral out of control. If I took one day off, that's just a little snowflake to go into a snowball, to go into a big snowball, to go into an even bigger snowball. So, I mean, if even if you break it up, you gotta know when to take your rest because rest is gonna be the biggest thing in any sort of um, fitness activity that you're trying to get into, whether it's CrossFit, biking, skiing, it doesn't matter. Rest is going to be your biggest factor to your
Indeed,
success.
connected to that, if you are going to make a resolution, it has to be flexible. If there is no flexibility, if it's completely rigid, you are bound to fail because throughout the 365 days of the year, you are going to run into unexpected occurrences that will stop you from running. And if that's the case and you have no control about it, well, then something that you could not stop, that you could not hinder, just caused you to break your resolution. You can be in the middle of December and break your resolution, and that would be awful. You need to have some flexibility. And speaking of flexibility, you might not want to start running in January because in colder states, especially like Minnesota, Montana, New York, Washington, up there, it's not warm, it's very snowy, it's icy, it's conducive to not running. And you have to understand that if you're going to start running. If I've run on the 1st of January, and I always see that guy or that woman running around without gloves. You're in Minnesota in January. What are you doing without gloves or mittens or something to protect your hands? So, when is the best time to start running? In my personal opinion, it's late spring because the snow is going to be melted. It's going to be nice and warm, but not too warm. And you have the summer ahead of you. There's not going to be any massive winter storms that have day-long consequences stopping you from running. That way, you have built an atmosphere within yourself, and you have an atmosphere outside that's conducive to running and keeping up that running.
Yeah, I mean, and if you don't want to wait all the way till late spring, going from personal experience, walking, just getting outside, bundling up, getting outside, and going for walks. And I'm not talking for just a little walk around the block. I'm talking about mile, 2 miles, 3 miles, working all the way up to 6, 7, 8, even more. Just getting your butt out there and walking. It's going to take a long time. I mean, let's say it takes 15 minutes to walk a mile. Well, you only get 4 miles in and you already went through an hour. But it's getting your legs moving, you're getting adjusted to kind of the starting form of running. You're getting used to going up hills, going down hills. You're just getting your body prepped. And if you start on the very 1st of January and you work all the way till late spring, I mean, you're setting yourself up for some good success into getting into running.
Indeed. I think for many starting runners, walking and building that into your runs is very important. You don't have to run the entire way from the get-go. You need to be aware of your limitations and be able to say, okay, I can't run a full 3 miles. I can't run a full 2 miles. I can't run even a full mile. And that's fine. We all start in different spots, but we do have the same goal. And so we want to get there healthily and without injuring ourselves. So building walks into your runs is a very smart idea if you're just getting into running. So what if you're already a consistent runner? New Year's resolutions can also be a very powerful tool in that case. They can be great goal-setting times where you want to think about what you want to do with this year. But the same rules apply. Indeed, it's very easy to say, I want to qualify for Boston. Now, from the get-go, that's a pretty good goal. If you are fast enough, that is pretty realistic. There's a time limit. You have to get it done by a certain date. There is accountability. Well, if you don't train, you're not going to qualify for Boston. And so that sets you up for a good time this year. However, again, there are some problems. What if you're a runner who only does 5Ks? Okay, that's fine. And you want to get up to a marathon. Ooh, that's quite a change. Hmm. James, you have more experience in this than I do. What are your tips?
Really just increasing your mileage, but not right away. Go very slow. I went with a program where, let's say you're only running 20 miles a week. Okay, so you're running 20 miles a week, and then next week you go up to 25. The week after that is going to be your peak week out of 4 weeks. Okay, so in a one month span, your third week is going to be your most. So you went 20, then to 25, and now you're at 30. Well, in that last week of the month, I want you to drop it back down 5. Okay, so you're at 25. So in a whole month span, you're just increased your mileage by only 5 miles. Now, that might not seem like a lot, but if you're training for a marathon, it's a good step. I mean, going from 5Ks, skipping 10Ks, skipping halves, and going all the way to a marathon, that's just your starting point. So, well, what happens after the 25? Well, then you go 25, 30, 35, back down to 30. Um, Now, mileage is going to be very different for everyone. Some people can't do really high mileage, like up into 80s, 90s, even 100s. So that's really where it's all going to come down to experience. You got to really learn what your body is capable of, and that's where long runs come into play. So try to find one day out of the week, whether it's during the weekday or weekend. I prefer weekend, Saturday or Sunday, to make it your long run. So this is going to be the longest mileage of your entire week. So if you're only running, let's say 5 miles on that Saturday or Sunday, you're running, let's say 11 or 12. Um, it's it's a big step, but again, this isn't going to be an all-out race pace. It's not going to be fast. It's going to be very slow. It's going to be easy conversation pace. So if you can find a buddy to run with you, or if you can find someone to ride bike with you when you do it, it should be easy conversation all the way throughout. Not going to be stressful. And again, if you're just not feeling it on that Saturday or Sunday when you're doing your long run, that's okay. I mean, it's it's like we were talking about rest. Your body just needs a little bit of rest, so don't put any kind of bad thoughts into your head of, oh, I'm not good enough to do this, I'm not good enough to do that. Just be like, it's a rest day. I needed a rest day. That's all it is. And that's kind of going to be your big play too. So if you can only run, let's say 5 days a week, try to do some sort of CrossFit. So either some biking or if you live in a warm state, maybe some swimming on that one of those days out of the weekend, and then rest. That's going to be your biggest factor to success.
Indeed, you touched on this, but running with another person or a group is a very, very powerful tool. If you can run with another person or with an entire group, not only do you have a greater accountability factor, but you have people that actively encourage you to keep going with what you're doing and to maybe get out of the comfort zone a little bit. Indeed, I think one of the biggest mistakes new runners and old runners make is doing the same thing over and over and over again. Indeed, a lot of people have one route that they stick to with a certain time in mind, a certain amount of mileage at, of course, the same pace. And that gets really boring. So having another person to run with you not only will force you to sort of compromise with that person or with that group to go to other locations in your town or in your area to run, but it will also keep you going through the more mundane parts of running. A great way to keep yourself interested, however, is finding those new routes. One of the things that's kept me in running this entire time is figuring out new little pockets of my city that I never knew existed. There have been parks that I've found that I never realized were connected to the greater city pedestrian trail system that are really beautiful, and I'm very glad I found them. There are also parts I don't want to see again, parts I'd like to avoid. And you know what? That's okay. It's good to know where you maybe don't want to be in your city. And so running can help you a lot in that sense. So running with another person and varying your routes is very important. Additionally, varying the types of runs is very important. If you just do the same thing at the same pace over and over again, the only way your body is going to get better is through conditioning. You're simply going to become a better runner. Who'd have thought the more you run, the better you become at running? But there's going to be a point where your body is perfectly conditioned to that pace on that route and nothing else. So come race time, you find you keep having similar times, or even your times regress. It's important to build in shorter, faster days and longer, slower days. That way you build up more muscles to go for speed, your body can go for speed, and you'll start seeing your race times pick up a bit more.
Yeah, changing up the speed's the biggest thing. I mean, what always kind of learned is if you're if you're a runner that's absolutely addicted to their running watch, throw it away. Put it in a drawer, leave it at home. First, figure out how long your route is. Okay, so for me, I had one summer where I ran the same route every single day for a whole summer, and it was boring, but I knew exactly where my miles were, how long I had to get to for this spot or for that spot, or how much I had left, and I would get rid of my watch because I wanted to run off a feel. So some days I felt great, I felt fast. Other days I felt sluggish and slow, but it really gave me confidence within my body to know that even on those slow, sluggish days, I can still push through. You really get kind of more in depth with your body and knowing how much you can do, how much you can handle, how hard you can push yourself, and you don't have a watch to tell you how fast you're going. I mean, there's some days where you feel slow, and if you have your watch on, you're like, gosh, I feel really slow. And then your first mile comes along, and you're like, wow, that was actually quick. But because you're not paying attention to every single mile, every single half mile of your watch, you're just letting your body do what it's supposed to be doing, that you're actually kind of boosting your confidence. Because sometimes you'll be like, yeah, that was a pretty slow mile. I might need to pick it up a little bit. And then the next mile, you're like, okay, yep, I can go faster. Next mile, faster. And then you hit a wall. At some point, you're just going to hit a wall and you can't go any faster. And that's really kind of going to get down on your self-esteem. So first, figure out a good route, figure out a good couple routes, really pay attention to the mile markers, and then throw away that watch. Get out there, just enjoy the scenery, enjoy how the weather's treating you, whether it's a nice sunny day or nice and cold and rainy, making you a tough runner. Just get out there and enjoy it, because for the long term, you want this exercise to be fun. You want it to be enjoyable. You don't want it to be something that is a chore. As soon as it becomes a chore, it doesn't become enjoyable. So just have fun with it. Just enjoy it, enjoy every second of it, because a lot of people can't. So be grateful for it.
Indeed, indeed. My final point on the matter will be don't believe everything you read in those running magazines. It may sound very official, it may sound incredibly smart, but I can't count how often I've gone to Runner's World and just seen terrible information about running that will guarantee you injuries. The thing is about a lot of these magazines is that there may be certain parts that were written by people from a certain company doing tests, and so of course that company is going to have certain interests that those tests go a certain way. And so a study may seem very, very legit, it may seem full of great information, but that information will be slightly turned a certain way so that you will be pointed towards a certain running company. The best way to get information about running, in my opinion, is to go down. If you have a local run specific store, go to that store. The people working there know what they're doing. They'll get you a good pair of shoes. They'll get you good information. If one worker doesn't know about, say, how to run a 10K, another certainly will. So look up if you've got any local run specific stores, check them out, and they'll get you the information you need.
Yeah, I mean, with those local running stores, I mean, they're there to help everyone. They're there to help out from little seventh graders that are joining cross country or track to those that are running ultra marathons and trying out for Olympic trials. Like they're there for anywhere in between, helping out elderly people that need better shoes just to walk around their house. They're there to help you. They're not going to hurt you in any sort of way. And then don't be afraid to ask questions. I mean, most of the people are gonna know a lot of the stuff that you're asking, but like you said, if someone doesn't know, they'll ask someone else, and 99.9% of the time they'll know the answers. So just ask
Indeed.
questions.
Okay, with that, we'll end this episode of the Fun Run. Keep running, keep having fun, enjoy the day, and don't slip on ice. Please do not. Watch out. If it's too icy on the side, don't run. It's okay. Don't want you to get injured.
All right, thanks, guys.